Good evening, Yidalach. How are you? How are you, parrots? Pinchas, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem.
Yochanan, how are you?
Baruch Hashem.
Very good. Sasson, you here? Okay. Shkoyach everyone for joining us.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shkoyach Pinchas. Shkoyach everyone for joining us. Tonight we're preparing Emetz Hashem for the third Beis Hamikdash to be rebuilt. And in these 3 weeks, we said on Sunday, we're going to learn something about the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash. About 14 years ago, it was about this time of the year, I was in Zhitomir. And I was in the mikveh. How many people do you think are in the Zhitomir, in the mikveh, in the middle of the summer? It wasn't that early in the morning. I bumped into my friend, Rabbi Gelbstein. Oh, Rabbi Gelbstein has an unbelievable yichus. This remarkable man. All of Shalom, his son took over his place there from the people that run the Chevra Kadisha Prushim in Yerushalayim. He was there because he was just a Baal Chesed, a Baal Tzedakah, and he was involved with the orphanage that the Shliach has in Zhitomir. He has an illustrious great-great-grandfather whose name was Reb Hillel Moshe Meshel Gelbstein. And I spoke about it by Mincha, B'Shas Raiv and Raiv and Shabbos. Fascinating story. I spoke about this funny haskama he has for a sefer from the Tzemach Tzedek, which I will put in the source sheets for tomorrow's shiur, and we'll look at it tomorrow. But just a fascinating guy, very interesting fellow. And he decides to make Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael. In the year 1870, he published a book, Mishkanos La'abir Yaakov. It's a long book, and the whole idea of the book is about the mitzvah of Kavod Mikdash. The mitzvah is one of the 613 mitzvahs to give kavod to the Mikdash by putting Shemrim. It's mentioned at length in the beginning of Parshas Bamidbar and also at the end of Parshas Koirach, about 6 psukim in each place. And he said, Haytachem, we don't do this mitzvah today. Well, how come we're not doing this mitzvah? The Rambam says that there were 3 Shemrim, the Kohanim, and 21 Levim. It's brought in the Mishnah, the beginning of Tamid, the Mishnah, beginning of Midas. He says, where are the Shemrim? Al-Chomthiich Yerushalayim, Ifkadati Shemrim Kalayim V'Halayla. Al-Chomthiich Yerushalayim, Ifkadati Shemrim Kalayim V'Halayla.
We don't listen to music nowadays.
Oh, where are the Shemrim? Where are the Shemrim? Where are the Shemrim? He was screaming. This guy wasn't the guy of dreams. He was a Baal Pa'ula. He came in at the time when the Koisel, there wasn't even a minyan 3 times a day at the Koisel Amaravi. He established that there should be minyanim there, Shachas Menchamaydev. He had this vision about Pichas Koinim being really special from the Koisel Amaravi. As you know, today there is hundreds of thousands that tune in, and there's a whole plaza, the Koisel Amaravi fills up. Cholamoyed Sukkot, Cholamoyed Pesach, Pichas Koinim, which was one of his thoughts. He was teeming with thoughts. That Zimmer Rebbe told him, you're going up, you should bring Mashiach. And this guy was on a mission. He's bringing Mashiach. He did nicht geschlafen, this guy. He wasn't sleeping. So he wrote a sefer about this thing that you have to guard the Beis Hamikdash. And he came up with a plan of how to do it. As I said yesterday, this guy was very interesting. This person, he grew up in Bialystok and Masnagid. Then he got Fachappa the Chassidim. He became a Chassid, the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe in Kotsk, Mendel of Kotsk. With the Rishus of his Rebbe, he went to the Tzemach Tzedek. And then he was by the Tzemach Tzedek, Yotaf Reshut Gimel. Then he was by the חידושים, became a Talmud חידושים, like I mentioned, Shabbos חידושים said, you're wasting so much time on learning Kabbalah. You would learn just Nigla, you'd become the next Shagas Arya. And then at the age of 35, he decided to move to Eretz Yisrael. He lived for 40 years in the house of the Rashash. Shalom Sharabi, the Makubal that came up from Taiman, who is known to so many for his Svarim and his Siddur Rashash. He was friends, like I said, with the Shmuel Salanta. He was friends with the Rebbe Leo David Rabinowitz, the Oyman, the Aderes. He was friends with the Toides Chesed, which was Lubliner Rav, a Chassid at Tzemach Tzedek. He was friends with the Mukubalim in the Yeshivas HaMukubalim. He was in Yerushalayim. He was an interesting fellow. And the ikar is he was burning. He was burning. He was on fire. Where are the Shomrim? Where are the Shomrim around the Harabayas? He wrote a whole sefer. I mean, it's not simple. You have shilas, but they can't stand on the Harabayas. Off the Harabayas, they still make the mitzvah. How many people do we need? Could we use, three kohanim? Could we use instead one kohen? Do we need 21 Levim? Could we use instead one Levi? How about if we have 48 Levim? Could we do more? Could we do less? Could we have Yisraelim? Do they must have big kahuna on them? Where could they start? There's a lot of shilas. He worked through over 100 pages in a sefer. And as I said, there was a counter sefer written many years later, Oilos Tamid, by the Minka Cheruv, the Minchas Aluzer, who pulverized him. He said, this is nonsense, this whole thing. And tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, Monday night, we'll spend the shir pulverizing the Minchas Aluzer. So that will leave for tomorrow. Tonight, we're going to take a very deep look at the mitzvah of guarding the Mokem HaMikdash, guarding the Harabayis and the Mokem HaMikdash. As I said, this is one of the 613 mitzvahs. And even if you think that it's not a mitzvah that's Nageya Lamaisa, for sure, in Avodas Hashem it's Nageya, and for sure, Mashiach Tzidkein is about to come, and this is going to be the first mitzvah we're doing, as the Beis HaMikdash is being built. Before you lay the foundation, they're going to be already doing this mitzvah. And if Mashiach is coming and like the shittas that the Beis HaMikdash will come down from the sky, then for sure we're going to need the guards right away. This is the first mitzvah we'll be doing. So definitely now is the time to focus. We're going to do a deep sikha in analyzing and understanding the idea of what's this mitzvah of mitzvahs shmiras habeis hamikdash. I hope you got the resource. It's a sikha. It's a chelik yud gimel really in Likutei Sichos. And otherwise, it's in the Sefer חידושים וביאורים לרמב"ם, הלכות הבחירה לרמב"ם חידושים וביאורים, סימן יוד zayin. The Rambam says in the beginning of Perek Ches, by the way, before we start, I mentioned this morning another character in Yerushalayim that lived at that time, Reb Akiva Yosef Schlesinger, the Levi Ari. He had a grandson who lived here in Flatbush, who unfortunately passed away with this dreadful corona machla. Rabbi Brook is an article from Rabbi Yosef, from Akiva Yosef Schlesinger. Now, people don't realize that Rabbi Brook was a shtick fire. Fire. And he really had that kanos from his Zayda, from Rav Schlesinger. Now, Rav Schlesinger was also one of those special characters that lived in Yerushalayim, that was Mola Begodesh from Nigla Nister. By the way, the Rebbe always used to quote from the Levi Ari, Akiva Yosef Schlesinger, that he brings in the Sefer the story that the Ramah used to put on a mask on Purim, and he used to go from courtyard to courtyard, and he used to announce, right, it's a might of mitaminyan. The Rebbe said that's his mocker for announcing at the end of every Fabrengen, the Rebbe said, noch nicht gemacht abrocha nachroine, wird sicher machen abrocha achroine. So that the Rebbe quotes from the Levi Ari, from Rebbe Akiva Yosef Schlesinger. I just want to mention, and since we mentioned already Rav Brook, that Lila Lishma said that we miss him a lot, and unfortunately, not all of us went as Levaya. Baruch Hashem, two of us who represented all of us, Shmulik and Shnei, went as Levaya. He was a very special person. Like Zayda, he had Kanos de Kedusha. If only the President of the United States took him as an advisor, the ganze Welt will gewinnen on the Platz. But kidding aside, Rabbi Brook, I don't know if everyone realized, but he was the kindest person around. He would give mamish, he would give from his time to mentor young people. He genuinely cared about the simchas and things. He always asked me, how you doing? How your children doing? He was a really, really special person, and we lost him. We should have a lichtige Gan Eden, and we really hope that just like in this world, Rabbi Brook, you couldn't just pull the wool over his eyes. Rabbi Brook had gemacht a Sturm wherever he came. So if the President of the United States didn't realize how valuable Rabbi Brook's advice is, but the Rebbeinu Shalom knows how valuable Rabbi Brook is. And Zicher, he could scream in front of the Kisei HaKoved, and always bet we should have already Mashiach Tzidkenu. So Rabbi Yosef, so by the way, you understand now Rabbi Brook, his grandfather, you get where the people are coming. His grandfather was opposed to this project of the putting guards around the Har HaBayis. So you had two strong people in Yerushalayim at that time. You had Hillel Moshe Meshel Goldstein, who was pro putting the guards around the Har HaBayis, and wrote a whole sefer, and he collected a lot of money, and he was on the thing, like I mentioned yesterday. He had the askamas from the Brisker Rav, Rabbi Shmuel Diskin. He had askamas from Rabbi Shmuel Salanter. He had askamas from the Rabbanim Achevrim, but the Sfad Rabbanim Yerushalayim came to him quietly and they said, "Listen, like they say in Yerushalayim, make me a favor." They said, "Make me a favor. Climb down your tree. We feel that the Arabs are boiling under the surface. And you're going to have 24 guards standing with a big base medrash." She had a whole plan. We're going to have an explosion over here of anti-Semitism. Please, and let's wait a little bit until Mashiach Tzidkenu will come. And to his credit, it must be said that even though he felt so strongly about it, but he decided to go away from this project. He had many other projects that he did in the benefit of Yerushalayim. And also from the Komis HaKadoshim around Eretz Yisrael.
Rabbi,
anyway, no further ado, I'd like to get into the Sikha. Siman Yud Zayin Shmiras HaMikdash. Sagt der Rambam Reish Perek Ches in Hilchas Beis HaBechira. Shmiras HaMikdash mitzvah saseh. Guarding the Beis HaMikdash is a mitzvah saseh. Even though there is no fear of enemies, there was no fear of listim, of robbers, it doesn't matter. The shmira is only a kovet. That you can't compare a paltein with guards to a paltein without guards. Think of Buckingham Palace. In other words, this is honor guards. These are not guards to guard. My kids were showing me the other day an article in one of these magazines. So there was a Ganev, a Michigan, he wanted to prove that he could get into the Queen's bedroom. He scaled the walls of Buckingham Palace, and all of a sudden, a shrek, she's changing herself in the morning. And she sees a man walking around her bedroom. And she had a buzzer. She buzzed for the Secret Service. They came rushing to her room. And this guy didn't want to hurt. He didn't want to chas v'shalom. He just wanted to show that that he could kriach. So you're asking where was the? But the Buckingham Palace has the most illustrious honor guards. Have you ever been in front of the Buckingham Palace to see the guards? It's a sight to see. Oh, so and especially the changing of the guards. Has anyone been there for the changing of the guards? Anyway, it's spectacular sight.
I've seen pictures, but I've never.
Oh, you've got to. I remember I was there as a kid. I was 15 years old. I went with my friend Yossi Refson. Oh, it was something. It was a sight. So with all the changing of the guards, this guy kicked up the wall down into no one bothered him. They're just busy. They're not busy checking for ganovim, for listim, oivim. Ain't sham pachad me'oivim or listim. They're only there, honor guards. So that says that Rambam was the job of the Kohanim and Levim guarding the Beis HaMikdash. Even if there's no pachad me'oivim or listim, it's a covet for the Beis HaMikdash. Mamshich ba'alocha beis. Shmira zu mitzvah kol halayla. This shmira is in the mitzvah's entire night. Shomrim and Kohanim and Levim. Who are the Shomrim? Koinim Elavim, Shanema Va'ato Benecha, Itach Lifnei Eidus. It says that you and your children should be in front of the oil. Koloma Atem Tiyu Shemrim Li. You're going to be the Shemrim. By Neman, it also says in the few psukim later, V'Shamris Mishmeres Oil Mayid. V'Neman also says in the Bamidbar, these two psukim are Pashas Koirach, where there's the 6-7 psukim that talk about the mitzvah guarding the base of Mikdash. But it also mentions about it in the beginning of Pashas Bamidbar, when it counts the Eden and when it's counting Shevet Levi, it says, I'm sorry. I went back 2 lines. Sorry. That's what they did. Moshe is the Levi, and Aaron and Nevanim are the Kohanim, which is 3 Kohanim and 1 Levi, by the way. Interesting. That's the Rambam. Sefer HaMitzvah says, there's a mitzvah to guard the Mikdash and to walk around it constantly. To honor it, to exalt it, to elevate it. And this is the command to Aaron, which is the same as the first pasuk brought in the Yad HaChazak in the Mishnah Torah. And the Torah repeats this tzivah 3 psukim later. Okay, this is the Rambam. This is the Sefer Mitzvahs. That's the source of. So it's counted 1 of 613 mitzvahs. And in the Rambam, Hilchos Beis Abchidas, there's 8 chapters. The 8th chapter, the whole 8th Pedic, is dedicated to this mitzvah of guarding the base of Mikdash. The Rebbe has a few questions here. A few questions over here. Interesting. One is a technical question, but it's telling. It's telling. In the Sefer HaMitzvahs, he brings a pasuk, and the pasuk is to show that there is a mitzvah to guard. Shetzivonu lishmar mikdash, hu amrei, and this is the pasuk. In the Mishnah Torah, he doesn't bring a pasuk. He says it's a mitzvah, and then for this detail, Shemiru zu mitzvasa kol halayla, and then he says Shemrim and Kohanim Balavim. So for this detail that the Shemrim and Kohanim Balavim, he brings the pasuk. Why? As again, it seems like a little discrepancy, but why? In the Rambam itself, chapter 7 is dedicated to the mitzvah of Moira Mikdash, and he starts the Pedic, the first halacha. He says mitzvah saseh. Looking at order 7. Mitzvah say lida mina mikdash shenemaro migidoshim tiro loy mina mikdash atayore ela mimish tzivele yoroi. So he starts off the entire chapter 7 by giving you an introduction. There's a mitzvah to have yida of the base of mikdash, as the pasuk says, mikdashi tiro. Why doesn't it? When it comes to the next pedic, when he talks about the next mitzvah, which is shmiras hamikdash, and as we will talk about this soon, these 2 mitzvahs are not so far apart. In fact, the Smag thinks that the 2 mitzvahs are really 1 mitzvah. So even the Rambam that thinks that they're 2 separate mitzvahs, but they're related. They're Pedic 7 and 8, one next to the other. Pedic 7 is the mitzvah of Yiras HaMikdash, and Pedic 8 is mitzvahs Kavod HaMikdash. So when he starts Pedic 7, he says, mitzvah asay lida min HaMikdash shenemar HaMikdashi tiro, and the next Pedic, you should say the same thing. Mitzvah say lishmar mitzvah shenemar. It says va'atu v'necha, like he says in Sefer HaMitzvahs. Why is it that he doesn't start this way? He says it's a mitzvah. That's it. Doesn't bring a pasuk. The second halacha, he says a few details. Mitzvahs kol halayla, not by yom. Then he says the Shemrim, the Kohanim, Levim. How do I know the Shemrim is Kohanim and Levim? Because the pasuk says atu v'necha, but he doesn't bring a pasuk for the general halacha. Obviously, this is a very telling shaila, so that it's going to get, obviously, it's lending itself for a geshmak alumdus to understand the Shittas Rambam in the midst of Shmiras HaMikdash. And then there's a question, number 2 and 3, which is a simple question. The Minchas Chinuch asks, whoever told the Rambam that the mitzvah guarding is only by night, not by day? It's not Mishnah Tamid. It's the beginning of Mishnah in Tamid and in Midos. two Masechtas, one after the other. It does never mention. The Minchas Chinuch said maybe he found up a Sabraisa that we don't know. Okay, you can't argue with that. But on the other hand, we don't know. And look in the comment in the Ha'oris 10, 11, 12, the Rebbe brings us a big list of Rishonim that hold one way, and a big list of Rishonim that hold the other way. The Mefarish on the Mesechus Tamid that I did, Smashma a little bit from the Rosh, that the mitzvah is 24/7. The mitzvah of the honor guards, that makes sense. It should be 24/7. And the psukim, there's no indication in the psukim that it's not 24/7. I would say furthermore, not that the Rebbe is saying but when you look in the story in Pashas Koirach, what happened? The first, there was a rebellion of Koirach against Moshe and Aaron, right? And what was the end of Koirach and the 250 men? Not a good ending, right? Then there was the Eden that complained, Atem amitem am Hashem. What happened to those people? Also, there was a Magay for 14,700 died. After everything, at the end of Pashas Koirach, Eden said that Kol HaKorev Korev Al Mishkan Hashem, that is Chayiv Misa, Im Tamnu Ligvoya. Rashi says, Shemu Tamnu L'Misa. I mean, it's so easy. The courtyard gets filled up, and one person gets, like in 70, you push. You remember it was the shvil, and all of a sudden you fall into the shvil. It gets pushed in the Chatzar al Moed, and all of a sudden someone pushes you. You end up in the oil Moed, and you're Chayiv Misa. So the Eibishter says, don't worry. The Eibishter responds to that. The Eibishter says, Yidden said in Koirach again, last pasuk in Yud Zayin, Kol HaKorev Korev Al Mishkan Hashem Yomos Tamnu L'Gvoya, and the next pasuk is Vayomer Hashem Al Aaron Ato Uvanecho Veisavicho Itoch Tisus Avayin Hamikdash. You're responsible. Va'ato Uvanecho Itoch Tisus Avayin Kunaschem. You're responsible. Not only that, Gam Esachecho Ma'ata Levi Shevet Avicha Hakri Vitcha V'Yelov Olacha V'Yishar Sucha Va'ato Uvanecho Itoch Lefnei Olamei Oedus. So you're responsible, and also the Levium are responsible. What are they responsible for? B'shamru mishmartecha, mishmeres kol oil, achal kol kliya mekodesh mizbeach leikrobu. V'nilvu olecha b'shamru es mishmeres oil moed l'chol avodas oil v'zor leikrev aleichem. And then again, the Torah reiterates: mishmartem es mishmeres hakodesh v'eis mishmeres mizbeach v'lo yeh ketzaf al bnei Yisrael.
It makes sense to say in the day you have Koyanim walking over there, coming in, coming out, right? You don't need God. At night, there's no avoiding Beis HaMikdash. It's quiet, so you need God. So you figure the God is Faganovim. No, it's not Faganovim for COVID. Makes sense.
But by day also, it's if you're scared that the Yid is going to walk in and you need a guard to tell him, I can. The people that are busy in the Avodah, they're busy in the Avodah.
No, there was shiurim in Beis HaMikdash to tell you to wear
they were open.
the sign.
They were open.
Do not enter. It's kodesh.
Okay. So you tell, but that's not what's mashra on the psukim. That's not what's mashra on the psukim. That's not what's mashra on the psukim. You're hitting on a nerve. You're hitting on the teretz, really. The Rambam is going to bring the psukim right away. You're going to ask a shayla. So where the Rambam got his lom, this is a separate thing. But taka hagufa, that's why he can't bring the psukim, because the psukim ataka mashma that there's no difference 24/7. If you're guarding, the people shouldn't walk in. So 24/7 are equal. Adirab, by day you need more shmita. By night the gates were locked. So who can walk in anyway? They can't walk in. Forget it. By day you need the shmita, not by night. So from the psukim,
they actually had a shemer on the shemrim.
Right, they actually had a shemer on the shemer. Ish Arabayis. So who told the Rambam that the Shemitah is only Balayla, not Bayom? Again, and look in the Ha'ora 10, he says that there's 3 Rishonim Befedish, the Mefarish, the Ravid, and perhaps the Rosh, the Befedish say that it's 24/7 this mitzvah. And the Rambam himself, in the Minyan HaMitzvahs, in the beginning of Sefer Hayad, in the olden days, who knew about that? But now that we learn Rambam, it's the second shir. Day 1, you learn the Akdama. Day 2, you learn all the mitzvahs asay. And day 3, you learn all mitzvahs loit asay. And the Rambam over there says, Lishbor bayis ze Tamid. Tamid. What does Tamid mean? Tamid usually means 24/7. Unless you learn the Maim Atat Tetzava, Tamid can mean Tamid, Erev Boiker. Tamid means 24/7. Who told the Rambam it's not 24/7? To say if he found an obscure brayse that we don't know, okay, if you have no choice, you give that teretz. That's not a lechatchila teretz. And then the last shaila is again a funny lashon in the Rambam. He says laleches vivoy tamid. What's this laleches vivoy? What's this laleches? Guards are not walking. Like in Buckingham Palace, when they change the guards, they're walking. They have a whole parade. But in the Beis Hamikdash, we never heard of the changing of the guard ceremony. And in Europe, it's a big thing. In Monaco, in London, in Monaco, wherever there's guards, changing of the guards, there's guards. The Beis Hamikdash should be what is the laleches of
In the Vatican.
Huh? Okay, but we don't go there. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you're joining us a little late, we're in the middle of a beautiful sikha about the mitzvah of guarding the Temple Mount, about the mitzvah, I say, of guarding the Beis Hamikdash, about the mitzvah then and the mitzvah now. Okay. So the Rebbe says like this. B'chlal, there's a pella that the same Mishnah that's talking about the guards is mentioned twice. Once in the Masechus Tamid, and again repeat in the next Masechus Midas. Why? In Masechus Tamid, it only talked about the 3 guards that were the Kohanim. Masechus Midas says the 3 guards plus the 21 guards of the Levim. But why the repeat? Why the repeat? Kapella, why twice say the same thing twice? Look at Rebbe, Moed de Kabir. Moed de Kabir. Unbelievable. I'll love this. It's delicious. That what's the mitzvah of Shmiras HaMikdash? There's 2 ways of looking at it. You could look at it at it's a detail in the building, or you could look at it, it's a detail, it's a din in the Kohanim and the Levim. In other words, is it a chiyuv of the cheftza or the gavin? Does the Beis HaMikdash need to be guarded? The Beis HaMikdash demands, I shall be guarded. Elamai, who should do it? The Kohanim and the Levim. Or is it no? There's a mitzvah on the Kohanim and the Levim, just like there's a mitzvah of the Korbanos. The Kohanim and the Levim bring it. Where do they bring it? Depends. Right when they came into the Eretz Yisrael, there was Noiva Givoin. Then there was in Shiloh. Sorry, first in Shiloh, then Noiva Givoin. Then it was in the Beis Hamikdash. But the dicket is there's a mitzvah on the Kohanim. But what's the mitzvah now that the Eibusha chooses the Har HaMoriah? So they have to guard this place in the Har HaMoriah. Is it a din in the Beis HaMikdash or is it a din in the Kohen? That's the Rebbe's question. And the Rebbe says, it depends what's the reason for this guard. Why are the guards here to begin with? If you say like the Rambam, that you can't compare a palace with guards or without guards. When you come to Buckingham Palace and you see the guards and the changing of the guards, it's impressive. Wow. Got to be someone special got to be in this building. So the whole mitzvah is a prat in the palteide. It's a din in the mikdash. It's a din in the mikdash. Elamai, who's doing it? The Kohanim are doing it. But it's a chidush that the Kohanim. That's what the Gemara says. And some of us say the question is, how do we know the Kohanim have to do it? Maybe the Yisraelim should do it. Oh, because the pasuk says the Kohanim have to do it. And then there's another reason you could say, which is the Pashta Pshat in the Chumash. The Pashta Pshat in the Chumash is that Jews complained. The Eibusha said, no, the Jews are right. What happens accidentally, he takes a bias miktzas, like we said this morning, he sticks his nose in. A little bit of his hand goes in. He gets pushed in. Chayav Nisa. Accidentally walks in. Chayav Nisa. Said, no, the Kohanim are in charge to be there and to warn the Eden and tell them, you're allowed to walk till here, don't walk a step further, it's dangerous. Or you could say that they're there to guard the Kalim. Even though, like the Mefarish says at the beginning of Tamid, that they weren't scared that Yidden would steal anything in the base of Mikdash. But it's fart. We have guards for it. Then you could say that's a chiyuv for the Kohanim and the Levi, right? The chiyuv of the Kohen and the Levi, the chiyuv of the Kohen and the Levi is to guard the Yidden, to safeguard the Jews. What's the job of the Kohanim in this world? To teach the Jews the way of Hashem. What's the job of the Levim? Like the Rambam says in the end of Shemitah V'Yovel, that spiritually every Jew could be a Levi. Every Jew could say, I am my brother's keeper. Every Jew is responsible for another Yid. So, summarize. There's two general categories of reasons why the base of Mikdash has to be guarded. One is it's a paltatin sheyesh of Shomrim. It's a palace that has guards. The other is to make sure that the people that don't belong there don't enter. If you say the point is it's a paltatin sheyesh of Shomrim, it's a din in the Mikdash. If it's safeguard the Yidden, safeguard the Kalim, the Yidden shouldn't go in and get Chas v'Shalom burnt. And that's a mitzvah for the Kohanim. The Kohanim is Ami Yoru ben Kodesh Lechoy, like the Navi says, that the mitzvah of the Kohanim and the Levim is to teach the Jewish people and also to protect them that they shouldn't Chas v'Shalom step into a place where they get burnt. Sagt der Rebbe. Wir können sagen a Chiddush azoi. That really both are true. Sedot zwei dinim. They're both true. It's a din in the Gavra, it's a din in the Chetz, it's a din in the Beis HaMikdash, it's a din in the Kohanim. It's also true that it has to be a paltatin sheyesh alav shomrim, but it's also true, like the pasuk says with Pashtus, they're protecting the Jews that shouldn't get burnt, or protecting the Kalim that shouldn't be stolen. So therefore, the Mishnah repeats twice about Shemitah, once in Maseches Tamid and one in Maseches Midos. In Maseches Midos, it's the Midos of the Beis HaMikdash. It's a din in the Mikdash. It's a din in the Paltatin. Tamid is the avoid of the Kohanim. It's a din in the Kohanim. That's why we say the Mishnah talks about the Shemitah twice. Once in Maseches Tamid and one Maseches Midos. It's a shame that Rebbe is going to sort of slug up this pshat. It's such a good pshat. I don't even want to go further. It's a geschmack pshat. It's reich pshat. That again, there's two dinim that you could say in the Shemitah Beis HaMikdash. You can look at it in two ways. You can ask, is it a din in the Gavra, a din in the Chefza? Is it a din in the Kohanim, a din in the Beis HaMikdash? Is it because it's a paltatin sheyesh alav shomrim, the Beis HaMikdash demands, I need to be guarded? Who should do it? No, the Kohanim will do it. Or is it's a chelik of the avoid of the Kohanim to guard the Yidden? They shouldn't get burnt by going into the Beis HaMikdash to protect them. They have to do many other things to protect the Jews. As Ami Yoru ben Kodesh Lechoy, they have to teach them, they have to inspire them, they have to kohen v'lashoifet ashiyah b'yom ha'heim. It's in general. Their job is to protect spiritually and physically and to daven for the Yidden and to guide the Yidden. And that's a chelik. It's a chelik of the mitzvah of the Kohuna. And the Rebbe says both are true. That's what the Mishnah once talks about in Maseches Midos, which is a din in the Beis HaMikdash, and one of Maseches Tamid, which is a din in the Kohen.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
Question: If the Ish Israeli entered into their shoygeg, he couldn't bring a korban?
Asking a good question. Probably yes. It's a chiyuv. It's a chiyuv misa. It's a serious thing. He's got to do tshuva before he expires.
Rabbi, another question.
Yeah.
In Shir HaShirim it said, על חומתיך ירושלים, הפקדתי שמרים כל היום וכל הלילה. According to this, it was day and night, Shomrim.
Oh, so son, you got it. That's why when I sent out the pasuk about tonight's shir, I quoted this pasuk, and I worked a little bit to find the pasuk. It's in Yeshעיה Samach Beis Vav. in Yesh'aya Samach Beis Vav. Al Chomthiach Yerushalayim Hafkadati Shemrim Kol Hayom V'Kol Halayla Tamiid.
If we say
that's why I named the shir, because the name of the sheet is the question that I'm going to ask. The Takazoi, the Kasha. Why is it that Rambam think that it's only Balayla? Who told it to him? It's not the Psukim. The Rebbe has a moedidik Chiddush to answer.
If a Kohen the Shomer over there, right? It's a mitzvah of the Kohen, not on the Beis Hamikdash. How could the other Shomer see him sleeping and burn his clothes? You burn Kodesh. You're not allowed to burn Kodesh.
You're asking a good question. First of all,
no,
there's
so that means the mitzvah is on the person, not on the beggar from Kodesh. That's not the kedusha from the this. It's
no, you
on
could
the,
say leiv bez the masna when the bez makes the begodim, it's part of the condition. If they'll sleep, then you could say a lot of lumdas. But the simplest thing I would say is that you hit on a lumdisha question. There is a machloikis. There are those that hold that the ha'ish harabayis can only hit and burn the begodim of a levi, not of a kohen.
right.
There's some rayas in it. There's a Rambam that's mashma that way. The ha'ish harabayis was only on the levim, not on the kohen.
In other words, the Levi cannot walk to the place with the Kohanim. There is a reason why 3 places only Kohanim and 21
That's
places
everything.
Levim.
The kohanim are more b'fnim. The Levim are
There's
more
a place that
b'chutz.
the Levim cannot walk
But
in.
Levim don't wear big day kahuna. According
Right.
to the opinion, the Ish Harabayis is only giving schmitz and burning the clothing of a Levi. So your question is an answer. That's why he can't do it by a kohen, because it's big day kahuna. Who gave him the right? It's Mila Bagdish who gave him the right to burn begodim.
Also, I think the Levi cannot walk to the place. The Levi has no permission to walk to the place where the Kohen is.
Huh?
The Levi has no permission to go to the place where
That's
the
a
Kohen
separate
is.
business. That's a separate business. That's not the begodim. You were asking, how can he burn big day kahuna? So first of all, you're hitting on a lot of lumdisha things. First of all, who says that the kohenim are chayiv to wear big day kahuna b'shas? They're doing the avodah of shmira. Tomorrow we're going to touch on this. Taka the frex tamoyed the guta kasha. That's Taka the sochik.
They can't walk into Beis Hamikdash with their own clothes. They have to change.
Oh yeah, you're asking very good questions. The Moshe Meshel holds, and he has a beautiful diuk in the Rambam that this is not an avoid, it's a mitzvah. It's not an avoid, it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah on the Kohanim the Levim, but it's not an avoid. Therefore, he doesn't have to wear big day kahuna, and therefore he's wearing his own pants and his own suit. And he can burn his own pants and his own suit.
But he wears shoes?
His own shoes, not the Beis Hamikdash shoes.
No, you're not allowed to wear shoes in Beis
Obviously.
Hamikdash. Your foot
But
have to touch.
the shaila is if it's avoida. If it's avoida, he's not allowed to wear shoes. It's not avoida, he could wear shoes. So this question that someone just asked, if their shoes or not shoes, is totally.
You have to wear shoes on the
The
Harabite.
poskim that say, the Avnei Nezer, we'll learn about this tomorrow, and said that it's an avoida, and it requires big de kahuna. So therefore he says, today we don't have big de kahuna, you can't do it. But Moshe Meshel will tell you, no, it's not an avodah, it's a mitzvah. It's not an avodah, it's a mitzvah. The Rebbe in Order 19 says, I'm not getting involved. The Rebbe says, I'm not getting involved if it's in my sikha. But I'm going to show you at the end of the sikha that the Rebbe is noita, that it is shayach, this mitzvah bizman hazeh. I'll show you at the end of the sikha. But here at this point in the Order 19, the Rebbe says, I'm not getting involved in this machloikis if it's avoida or mitzvah. But this question, if it's avoida or mitzvah, really touches on the question if it's bizman hazeh. If it's a mitzvah, it's shayach bizman hazeh. Tefillin is a mitzvah. Do we do it bizman hazeh? Yeah. Mezuzah is a mitzvah. Do we do it bizman hazeh? Yeah. Avoida is a koyanim. We do it? No, it's avoida. Avoida requires big day kahuna. Avoida requires big day kahuna.
But you need the Beis Hamikdash in order to have the chiyuv of the mitzvah of shmir, or you don't need it? It's
No, not necessarily. That's another shaila we'll deal with tomorrow. But for example, we spoke about this once, and there's a whole sefer printed about this. Agilsa sefer. It's just like this controversy about that. There's a whole controversy about the Korban Pesach. You're allowed to bring the Korban Pesach even without the. You just go up to Harabais. You can be a Tomei Mace, and you're allowed to bring the Korban Pesach. So there's a whole firestorm. The Gedolei Yisrael that held that we allowed to do it. The Chafetz Chaim really wanted to do it. The Chazon Ish held that you could do it. Others said, no, you're not allowed to do it. It falls on a technicality. So the people that hold you're not allowed to do it say, because you need the big day kahuna, and there's a whole suffix how you can make the abnet. In Mamish, the whole thing falls on a little detail. But back to our thing. If you hold that it's an avoida, you need to have big day kahuna, and we don't have that. If you hold it's a mitzvah, you don't need big day kahuna, and we're fine. So if you hold it's a mitzvah, not an avoida, he can wear his own pants and his own shoes, and his own kapota. He's wearing his own kapota. Let burn it. That's one shiloh for Shmulik's thing. Second answer for Shmulik's kasha is that if you hold like the Meforshim, the Ishbar Abayis had only permission to burn the begodim of the Levim, not the Koyanim. So Adarabah, that's the reason. Koyanim were wearing big day kahuna. Who give you the right to burn it? The Levim were wearing their own pants. Adarabah, burn it.
Nobody is allowed to wear shoes on the Har HaBayis, not even in Israel.
In the Har HaBayis or in the Azores? Not allowed to wear shoes in the Har HaBayis, so the sandolim, didn't they put that under the thing by the shad of the Azores?
No, the whole Har HaBayis, you can't wear shoes.
Okay, I'll be ma'ayin. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
Probably where the Arabs learned to take off their shoes by prayer. And they ask them why they don't eat pig. That's about the only thing they don't eat that we don't eat.
Okay. Okay. So this is one pshat. We went off on a tangent because the few good questions were asked. So I just want to go back to summarize what we just said. The Rebbe said, I asked a question, a chakira. What's the foundation of the mitzvah of Koved HaMikdash, Shmiras HaMikdash? Is it a din in the Gavra, a din in the Cheftzah? Is it a din in the Kohen or a din in the Beis HaMikdash? Is it because it has to be a paltadin, Sheyesh Alav Shemrim, or is it to protect the Yidden not to go in? The Rebbe says that both are true, and therefore the Mishnah is repeated twice about the guards. One in Mesachas Midas and one in Mesachas Tamid. Midas is about the din in the Beis HaMikdash, and Tamid is about avodah shel tmidiyos shel hakohen. Then the Rebbe says that the Rambam himself perhaps holds that there's only one thing here. How the Rambam is going to answer the two Masechtas, I don't know, but that it's only a din in paltadin sheyesh olav shemrim, and therefore he brings these. It's interesting that the dinim of guarding the Beis HaMikdash, he brings the hilchos Beis HaBechira. He doesn't bring later later he brings the avodas of the Beis HaMikdash. But guarding the Beis HaMikdash is the 8th Perek in the halachas of building the Beis HaMikdash. It's all part of the building department. It's all part of the building of the Beis HaMikdash. And therefore the Rebbe says that Pashtus, that's why the Rambam doesn't bring the Psukim of Parshas Koirach. Because the Psukim of the Parshas Koirach is Akashim. That's the source for the mitzvah. You're telling me the whole reason is it's not a din in the Kohen. It's not to protect the Yidden not to go in. Kilu, the Rambam learns that the Yidden complain. The Eibush said to Moshe, they have to guard the Beis HaMikdash anyway in order for it to be a fancy paltadin sheyesh olav shemrim. Memela, anyway, the Yidden will be protected. But that's not what it looks in Pashas Aksuvim. The Rambam can't say mitzvah say lishmer Beis HaMikdash. Shenaman, atav anecha ita lifnei ola edus. If he's going to say that, right, are you going to jump up and say, what are you talking about? That's not what the pasuk is saying. The pasuk is not talking about Koved HaMikdash. It's talking about to protect the Yidden, that they shouldn't get burnt, they shouldn't die chas v'shalom when they enter. So emes taka, the Rambam at angelernt the pshat in the pasuk. But that's not, see, you can't bring. The only reason you bring the psukim in Sefer HaMitzvah, he talks b'chlal. He's not going and say, b'chlal, the mitzvah comes from these psukim. But Sefer Hayad, where he's talking b'firat, so you can't say such a thing. So therefore, he just brings these psukim as a raya that this mitzvah of Paltadin, Sheyesh Alav Shemrim, is on the Kohanim and on the Levim. And out of 30 says a beautiful svara. Why couldn't the Rambam think that the main thing of Taka in the Psukim HaKodesh, it sounds like the main reason why the Kohanim are guarding is that to protect the Jews, that the Jews shouldn't get burnt when they come in. They shouldn't Chas V'Shalom die. But the Rebbe says, the Rambam says that can't hold that that's the reason, because he holds that because by night the Beis Hamikdash, the gates are locked. And again, if you think about it, the Rambam L'Shitosoi holds that the Shemitah is only by night, and by night the gates are locked. So what are you telling me? The Shemitah is only by night, and by night the gates are locked. And what are the Shemitah? To protect the Yidden not to go in? Doesn't add up. Vildafka Kvetchim probably could say, because there were no locked gates in the oil moyeds, there's a mitzvah stayed. Probably you can kvetch if you want. But the Rambam Pasha said, if you hold, it's 2 plus 2. If you hold that the mitzvah guarding is only by night, and you hold the gates were locked by night. Everyone agrees. The Mishnah for Ashes. So then, what are you telling me? The guard is to protect the Yidden not to enter. If the Rambam holds that they know that the guards were there as honor guards. Altaydin sheyesh alav shemrim. Altaydin sheyesh alav shemrim. Okay. But still, Dr. Rebbe, with all this lumdus, there's first of all, it answers only the first question. Why the Rambam and Sefer HaMitzvahs bring these psukim Parshas Korach, and in the Mishnah Torah, he doesn't bring these psukim, he just brings them as a raya for the detail that the Shemin Makonim and Levim. So understand why. Because the Parsha psukim has nothing to do with Paltadin Sheyesh of Shemin. But the other few questions are not answered. I mean, the other question is, why did the Rambam think that the mitzvah is only to guard it by night, not by day? Who told him this? This is still not answered. And then this is the etzem beer that we gave, that this tzvei dinim, Mesachas Tamid, Mesachas Midos, it's a little bit schwer. First of all, if it's a din and avodas hakohanim, why are you telling him Mesachas Tamid? The Rambam writes in Mesachas Tamid, ein bo dibor al derech ha-chochma, v'lo al derech el sipur dvorim shuoim re'ei choyim akridim ha-tamid. The last game Tamid. It was avoided the kohanim, it should be in Mesachas Yumas, Vachim, Menachas, Mura. And on the other hand, if you're saying it's covered in Mikdash still, well, why is it Mesachas Midas? Midas is about building the base of Mikdash. It's not a biur, perfect biur. The Rebbe says another biur here, a beautiful biur. It's not Oizvov, third paragraph. He quotes the Rosh. The Rosh writes, "Covered ha Mikdash shelo yasiach daitam nimenu loy bayom v'loy balayim." What is the covenant of the Beis Hamikdash? It's such a choshev place. People are always thinking about it. It's occupying the minds of people. Not necessarily guards with guns, swords, but it's occupying the mind. The Rebbe says, al derech the tzitz, al derech tefillin. Din is a tefillin, you're not allowed to masiach das. What does it mean, not masiach das? You have to stand with a gun in front of your tefillin. The tzitz, you got to stand with a spear in front of the tzitz. The shmira of tzitz and tefillin is the cheshivas, that they're so holy that there's no such thing that I'm wearing tefillin and all of a sudden I got involved in some political conversation after shul, about what's going on with the coronavirus or what's going on in the Middle East. Shas, I'm wearing tefillin, I'm cognizant that David's name is carved on my brain, it's on my head, the tefillin is on me, in my hand, on my head. Same thing with the tzitz. That's the idea of the Shemitah. The idea of the Shemitah is there shouldn't be any hesach hadas. Shouldn't be any hesach hadas. Dr. Rebbe, that's why it goes into Mesachas Midos. When there is, the idea is it's such a choshev building that people can't not think about it the whole time. It's on their minds all the time, and the Yidden are not there always to think about it, but the kohanim are the shluchim of the Yidden. and the Levim and the Shluchim and the Yid. The Rebbe says a beautiful word from this. He say, "Kol mi sheno igniv lebeis hamikdash b'yovav v'reizeh kimilu enachra b'yomav." The Rebbe says, when we're sitting tonight, us here in Flatbush in the year 2020, Tov Shem Pei, and we're learning Hilchis, Beis Abchira Rambam, the 8th Pedic. We're learning the first Mishnah Maseches Tamid, the first Mishnah Maseches Midois, the sugya of Shmiras Beis Hamikdash, that's mitzvah. We're not just learning a mitzvah of the 630 mitzvahs. Right now, it's as if we're guarding the Beis Hamikdash. The mitzvah of guarding the Beis Hamikdash doesn't mean that you're standing with a certain costume, with a fur, big, funny hat. It's that you're not Mashiach Das. Not Mashiach Das. Can't stop thinking about it. We're going crazy now about the Beis Hamikdash. We're totally immersed in Shabbos, Shalosh Shudas, and Beis Menachem Mendel. We're immersed in the sugya. Like Rebbe Yosef Schlesinger, like Moshe Meshel Gelbstein, like the Avnei Nezer, the Minchas Chinuch, like the Minchas Aluzer. Are we going to set guards around the Beis Hamikdash? Are we not setting? What's the inyan in these guards? Is it a din of the Gavritz, a din of the Chefze? What's it a din? Hesach Hadas? This is what we're doing. We're thinking now about the guarding of the Beis Hamikdash. That's what we're doing. We're guarding. We're mekayim now the mitzvah. We are now being mekayim the mitzvah saseh of guarding the Beis Hamikdash by talking about it, and specifically by talking about the mitzvah of guarding the Beis Hamikdash. We're being now mekayim the mitzvah saseh. We are right now being mekayim the mitzvah saseh of guarding the Beis Hamikdash. And you don't need to have the fancy hat. You don't need to have the red costume or the gun in your hands, but it could help. I'll tell you why. Tavshem Mem Ches, I was going with my cousin Shmuley Goldberg to give Shalach Manas to a friend, Cheske Malamed. He lives on Eastern Park, right? I'm telling you the names so you get a picture. So I went up Albany, and I picked up my cousin his house in the corner of Albany and Eastern Parkway, and we walked to Cheske's house, which is the middle of Kingston between on Eastern Parkway, Kingston, Brooklyn, and we were waiting at the light at the corner of Kingston Avenue and Eastern Parkway. He was dressed like a guard standing in front of Buckingham Palace. And I made myself some shemata like a guard also. I made myself like a blue thing, a face with stripes and things with a hat that I made. It was homemade. And we were both standing next to each other. And we were looking at the light. We didn't even realize that the Rebbe's car was sitting there. I had no idea why the Rebbe's car was waiting for a light. Usually it was an unusual thing. The Rebbe's car is waiting for a light. And we looked. And we said, Rebbe's car. We said, hey, look, the Rebbe is sitting there. The Rebbe looked up at us, and the Rebbe gave a salute. The Rebbe gave a salute. Yeah, the Rebbe gave a salute. So if you put on now if you put on the begod, then maybe you'll be zecher to get the salute.
Maybe
but either way,
maybe
no, it wasn't Hashem. No. I have pictures somewhere. I'll find the pictures. I'll show it to you. I have pictures. I myself, I don't have a shmuli, but I know my costume. I have pictures. I worked hard to make it. My parents wouldn't buy me some costume. I made my own costume. But shmuli bought it. It was a beautiful Buckingham Palace, with the big black fur hat. And the Rebbe gave a salute. So right now we're doing this mitzvah because we're not being Mashiach Das. The Rebbe says that you could say that this is a moidet, so this is a chidush that the Rebbe has. Where did the Rambam asks the Minchas Chinuch? Who told the Rambam that the mitzvah is only by night, not by day? The mitzvah is by 24/7. The psukim is mashmas 24/7. There's no mishnah, no brayso tell me otherwise. It's like the Rebbe here is the word. What's the heart and soul of the mitzvah? What's the heart and soul of the mitzvah of guarding that we care about? We can't forget. Hafkadati Yerushalayim, Hafkadati Shemrim Kol Hayom V'Chol Halayla, Yerushalayim. We can't forget. It's Kol Hayom v'Chol Halayla Tamid. We can't forget. That is the Shemitah. It's just by night when people go to sleep and they start snoring under their pillow. And even the Kohanim Bebeis HaMoikid are sleeping. Now you need Kohanim that are actually standing guard, not to be Masiyach Das. But b'shas they're doing the avoida itself makes it shouldn't be a hesach das. The avoida allein macht uf. It's a shaf, das soll nicht sein kein hesach das. There is no hesach das now. The kohanim are doing the avoida satomid. That's why it's a maseches tomid. That's why it's a maseches tomid. The Rebbe says we could say a chidush la'aloch from this. A moedik a chidush. First of all, we could say that the Rosh who says "Shaloy asich daitem loy bayom v'loy b'layla," he didn't mean the guards are there 24/7. He means you're not masich das 24/7. He also is like the Rambam. The guards are only there by night. Who needs guards by day? The idea of the guards is to show the chashivos that there's no hesach hadas. Another big nafkamina la'alocha, says the Rebbe. A big nafkamina la'alocha. When did they stop guarding by night? Aloisa Shachar? When did they stop guarding? So the Rebbe, the Avoid in the base of Mikdash used to start Koidim Sheyal Amud HaShachar. If you say that the Avoid takes over the guarding, so perhaps the guards would stop guarding even Koidim Sheyal Amud HaShachar. When they started the Avodah, that's when they stopped. As soon as the Avodah Hatzamidiyos Shalabes HaMikdash starts in the morning, and which is Koidem Alois HaShachar, that's when the guards would stop guarding. That's where the Rambam took his thing, that the guards are not 24/7. It's not the pshat they're not. They are 24/7. Everyone agrees. It's the Chadav Pasha. The Mishnah, the Tamid, the Midas, the Pasuk, just that big. What's the heart and soul of this whole Shemitah? There shouldn't be hesach hadas. By day, through the avodah, there is no hesach hadas. I think from this would come out another unbelievable nafkamina. As I said, the Rebbe in Order 19 says he's not getting involved in this machloikis if you need guards for Zman Hazar or not. But as I said, in Tav Shenun, the Rebbe thought about it again. This sikha was said in Tav Shen Lamed Beis. And he said, really, I think that there is the mitzvah today. And I wonder why Gedolei Yisrael didn't do it for 2,000 years. And the Rebbe gave an answer. But an answer is an answer. But still, in principle, the Rebbe thought that it is negei of Zman Hazeh. So, Lloyd the Rebbe's Chidush, 24/7, Zman Hazeh. When the Rambam said it's only by Laila Zuzman based on Mikdash because there's avodah going on. But Bizman Hazeh, when should there be? 24/7. You got what I'm saying? The Rebbe is not saying it, but I mean, it's the Chlachayr, it's Chadav Pashut. Chadav Pashut. Dr. Rebbe, with this we can explain why it's said twice, once in Maseches Tamid and once in Maseches Midas. Maseches Tamid wants to emphasize the Maseches Tamid is talking about Ein Boi Loi Chachma V'Loi Al Dvar Yisa V'Het. It's just talking about the avodah Tmidiyos of the Kohen. The main Hesach Hadas, the taking over that there should be no Hesach Hadas was through the Kohen and doing their avodah, which took over the Shemitah of the Kohen. That's why the Mishnah Maseches Tamid only talks about the three places that the Kohenim guarded. Yesh B'Chlal Masayim Mona. Obviously, when the Kohenim are doing the avodah Beis HaMikdash, we don't need any Shemitah, not the Kohenim and not the Levim. But there was a difference between the Shemitah and the Kohenim and the Levim. The Kohenim were B'fnim, the Levim was B'chutz. B'fnim means B'fnim B'kodesh, or B'fnim means L'mayla L'aliyas, V'agagim, which loy niskacha. But anyway, the Kohenim had a higher position. Physically higher, in a higher space. They were on top of the gate. They were a lower place, or they were in the Kodesh. So the Ikar in Maseches Tamid is that through the avodah Tmidiyos of the Kohenim took over that we don't need to have the guards. That's Nikar B'Ikar, and the Shemitah of the Kohenim was taken over by the avodah of the Kohenim. Therefore, we're not talking about the Levim. Shenk in Maseches Midas, which is talking about L'Poel Mamish, when you came by night, you saw Paltadin, Sheyesh Shemrim. It's impressive. The more Shemrim you have, the more impressive it is. That was the machloikas. Some hold that Minatoida you need 3 kohanim minimum and 1 Levi, which is mashma. That's when the psukim. There was Moshe, Aaron, and Bonav. Moshe is 1, Levi, and Aaron is 2 sons. But you can have more and more. The Chazal said 3 kohanim fine. We'll leave it, and 21 Levim, 24 altogether. If you want, you can have 48. You can have 54. You can have 125. Yagdal Torah v'Yad. And it's all more. So that's why in Maseches Midos he mentions not only about the 3, but also about the 21 of the Levim.
Rabbi Shlomo HaMelech in Shir HaShirim, it said 60 גיבורים סביב למיטתו של שלמה, כולם אחוזי חרב מלומדי מלחמה, איש חרבו על ירכו מפחד בלילות. These גיבורים were afraid at night. They used to put the sword.
Right. He was afraid.
It's not the same shomrim Bet HaMikdash.
No, in the Beis HaMikdash it wasn't for afraid. Even Shlomo Melech didn't need. The Gemara says that the Shomrim only were later, after he had that encounter with Ashmedai. It was only after he had his encounter with Ashmedai that. Thank you for the beautiful pictures in the Beis HaMikdash. Magic, it's magic. Elisha, it's magic.
Yep, I'm doing that for you while you're speaking, and make it more real.
So let's wrap up the. Okay. So, yeah, thank you, Mitzvah Shem, because we're imagining it, and a Mitzvah Shem from the Chazoin, and the imagining, it'll come to real. So,
Amen.
So this brings us to the last Chiddush of the Rebbe. Amen. Yeah, and the list brings us to the last Chiddush of the Rebbe. Sorry, we're running out of time, but I want to wrap it up, not leave it unfinished. Look at the last page. The Rebbe brings that the Rambam says this was the last question. It was basically 3 shilas. One is about the discrepancy of the psukim. The other one is who told the Rambam that it's not a 24/7. So the answer that Rebbe says it is 24/7. It's just the avoida makes it shouldn't be as chadas. The whole idea is it shouldn't be as chadas. And the third nakuda was, what's this thing, laleches svivei tamid? The Rebbe brings that the Mishnah says, Ish harabayis, v'machazak kol mishmar u'mishmar, v'chol mishmar she'niyayim, and nikush riyoshin, choyfte b'makel, he would hit him, and then he would burn his bed. And they would say, the whole Yerushalayim would say, oh, what? This guy fell asleep. They're hitting him, and they're burning his begod. Okay? Rebbe says, why is the Mishnah telling us the story? Because that means there's no Hesach Hadas. When he's going, the whole thing is shouldn't be Hesach Hadas. He wanted to make sure there shouldn't be Hesach Hadas. He was part of this thing, making sure no Hesach Hadas. The Rebbe says like this. The Mishnah says, Beis Avtina Sobei Asanitzutz, in the beginning of Maseches Tamid, Hoya Aliyos, Ve'haroibin Shemrim Sham. What's a roibin? Who's a roibin? It's a funny word. The Gemara says the lamati lamevet avodah. These are youngsters that didn't come to do avodah. Some Mefarshim means they're under the age of 20, but other Mefarshim, no, they're under 13. Mefarshim asks, what do you mean under 13? A kid under 13 doing avodah in the Beis HaMikdash? How could you be mekayim the mitzvah? It's like saying that a balkoida is going to be under bar mitzvah. That's mitzvah derabbanan. But still, you understand, you can't have a balkoida who's under bar mitzvah, right? How could they have little children? Ein bnei mevet mitzvah. How should they do? The Rebbe says because the main thing was it shouldn't be hesach hadas, and we find that in many things, if there's godel oimd al gabi cotton, the machshavas hagodel is mitzdarif to the cotton. The Maisa cotton and the Machshavas HaGodel come together to make one full thing. The cotton doesn't have such a full Machshavah. It's a cotton. It doesn't have, but the Godel does have Machshavah. So if you put together the Maisa, the cotton, and the Machshavah, the Godel, you find certain halachas where it works. That's why, because the main mitzvah was that there shouldn't be Hesach Hadas, so it was kosher to have children. They wanted to emphasize that the main thing of the mitzvah is there shouldn't be Hesach Hadas. Therefore, they used even children. The point is that there shouldn't be hesach hadas, and that can be done even with a child as long as there's a ish harabayis that's in charge. Wow. That's the pshat laleches svi tamid, because we're talking about the ish harabayis. That it's laleches svi tamid. The mitzvah is to make sure there's no hesach hadas. And that happened through the ish harabayis, because some of the guards were children. But through his machshava, the tziduk to their maisa, it was never hesach hadas. So with this chidush, the Rebbe Fanford say bomba kashas. How could the Rambam, some Rishonim, say that it's not a 24/7 shmira? Answer: it is a 24/7 shmira. It is 24/7. The point, the heart and soul of the mitzvah should be hesach hadas. B'shas they do the avodah, there is no hesach hadas. And as I said, from this chidush comes two nafkaminas. Number one, that the Rebbe says that the guards would stop already before Allah Shachar when the avodah starts the base of Mikdash. And another nafkamina is Zman Hazeh. If you believe there's a mitzvah, it has to be 24/7, even according to the Rambam. A second word the chidush Rebbe says, old Mefarshim, how can you have under bar mitzvah? How can you have under bar mitzvah? Well, what do you mean under bar mitzvah? It's a mitzvah, it's a essential Torah, because the point is it shouldn't be hesach hadas. For this, it helps the mice of the cotton, but with the machshava of the ish harabayis. Gewalt, Gewalt, Gewalt geschrien. Brüder, Gewalt geschrien. Gewalt, Brüder, was schlaft ihr eine, zwei, drei, vier. Gewalt, Brüder, was schlaft ihr eine, zwei, drei, vier. Es ist doch Zeit zu gehen hinten der Beis Hamikdash, 1, 2, 3, 4. Es ist doch Zeit zu hinten der Mikdash, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have to guard the Beis Hamikdash. We have to guard the Beis Hamikdash. We see from the Rebbe's Lomdus, simple Hayra and Avodas Hashem. When we are not Masiach Das from the Beis Hamikdash, we are now doing the mitzvah of guarding the Beis Hamikdash. The point is not the fur hat. The point is not the spear or the gun or the club. The point is that there shouldn't be hesach hadas. And that b'shas tonight, there is 16 points of contact throughout Flatbush that are joining the shir tonight from all parts of this neighborhood to join in to learn about this mitzvah. So we're not doing hesach hadas. We're doing the opposite of hesach hadas. We are thinking it's precious to us. The Harabayas, the Temple Mount is precious. The Beis Hamikdash is precious. And we can't forget about it. And we're thinking about it. And we're talking about it. With this, we're doing the mitzvah. And that's the same thing in everything in life. Anything that's precious, you can't forget about something that's precious. Something that's insignificant, forget about. Like we're learning in the Mimer and Chassidus, and we started Friday, that sometimes a person tells you a story, a few details are not so exact. Whatever. It's an interesting story. It's entertaining. What do I care if this detail is true or not? But if you're telling me a story that's negeya, you mean that every detail is very important. Every detail is very, very important. Every detail is important. So same thing here. When it comes to things that are our sanctuary, our mikdash, things that are holy in our life, we can't be Masiach Das. Other things in life, Corona, Shmona, we can be Masiach Das. It'd be much better than we Masiach Das. Things will work out much better without us agonizing over it. It'll take its own course. But when it comes to Kedusha, things that are holy, things that are important, we're not allowed to Masiach Das on those things. Anything that's trivial in life, we get so caught up in worries about life. The Rebbe is one of the favorite things that Rebbe used to write to people is, be Masiach Das. Forget about it. Forget about it. Yeah. Brooklyn, one word. Yeah. Forget about it. Forget about it. But when it comes to the Beis Hamikdash, it comes to things that are holy and important to us, don't forget about it. Think about it all the time. We never forget the Beis Hamikdash.
Yetzias Mitzrayim,
6 million Kedoshim, because they were sacrifices and the Kedoshei Elyon. We never forget that sort of Haruge Malchus. And we implored the Rebbeinu Shalom and their schus that finally that this fire that Be'esh Yitzatu, Be'esh Ata'asad L'Gnoisa, we don't forget and we don't want the Eibishter to let it go any longer, that we should be Zoiche, that before this Tisha B'Av, that we should have the Binyan Beis HaMikdash, and when it comes to Tisha B'Av, we should have the schus to already be standing around the Har HaBayis, guarding the Beis HaMikdash, Al Chomteich Yerushalayim, הפקדתי שמרים כל היום וכל הלילה תמיד.
Amen.
We spoke about the Sikha, Tomid Shel Shachar, and Tomid Shel Ben Arbaim, and the Shulchan Aruch finished with Tov Lev Mishte Tomid. The Korban in the morning, Korban in the night, and Tov B'Simcha.
I can't wait till we get to Israel and all these words come to fruition for real. Not just from talking. It'll really happen, and we'll all be there. We could see the guards watching. They'll be watching the Beis HaMikdash. They'll be watching us. It'll be for real. It won't just be just talk that people may think, make believe that it doesn't even exist.
There's a
can't wait. I can already foresee it
that says in
happening.
Yiddish that the God staying by this. I can't go in. Forgot the word.
But those are not good shomrim. Those are the shomrim that don't let us in. But these shomrim that we're going to have in the Beis HaMikdash are just going to direct us. Where's the right place to go? These shomrim are going to be different type of shomrim. Okay.
A shomer that stay inside the building when the gate is closed, who need it? You need it to be outside. If the gate is closed, you need to be outside.
That's the Levim's job. We have plenty of Levim in our show. We have plenty of kohenim. Maybe shall open the tackle. We should discuss that we're tonight koching the mitzvah shmiras and we should be zeicher to do the mitzvah with Baal Mamish.
Amen.
Amen. For joining us. Amen. Have a tzlochedike week.
Amen.
Amen.
אם הלווים של הכנסת צריכים לשמור על בית המקדש עדיף שלו. אני אומר, אם הלווים של הבית כנסת צריכים לשמור על בית המקדש עדיף שלו.
מתחילים מזה.
כן, אוקיי.
Okay, please join us tomorrow. We're going to continue about the history of the story of what went on in Yerushalayim and the Machloikis and whatever. We'll wrap up the Sugya Mitzvah tomorrow night. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Morosov, I send you a text I send you a text when I came to the Friedrich Rebbe touch the Koisel.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, gewaldig. I'll share it with the Olam and Mitzvah Shem.
Oh, you did touch the Koisel?
It's already late. I'm going to share it with the Olam. Thank you very much.
Okay.